Well, good morning to everyone. Listen, I didn't announce this, I didn't do anything, I just jumped on. I thought about something today and I was like, well, I don't know if anybody's talking about this or not, but one of the problems that we have here with our channel that's out of control right now, that has made false accusations against other people, just shown some really, it's in poor taste, everything that's happened so far. Um, there's the abuse of the court. There's considering themselves more important than the victims. There is uh, basically claiming that, one moment, basically claiming that well, they're just like the victims. Well, no, you're not. No, you're not. And we've talked about that already. But here's the problem with this person and what's going on. And it actually has a name, and it's called main character syndrome. Now, I saw that somebody kind of touched on that on one of the other channels, but they didn't really explain what it was. Okay. So I'm going to actually explain exactly what it is and what happens when you have main character syndrome. Okay. Hey, Sprinkle Donut, good to see you this morning. I just jumped on to talk about this for a second. I just thought about it a long time. I thought about it. I was like, I just thought about it a while. And I was like, okay, somebody needs to talk about exactly what this is and how it happens and why it happens. So here we go. So think about this for a second. Maybe you embrace main character energy, like right before something big, important happens in your life, something that fits the narrative of your story. Because basically, all of these stories are her stories. She's, ingratiated herself into these families' lives. And hey, Choo Choo, good to see you. And so now this is her story, right? Even though we know it's not her story, she's presenting a story about a situation that is being talked about that is newsworthy. So this is kind of how the main character syndrome happens. Let me take a drink of coffee. It was 51 degrees here when I woke up this morning. I was like, hallelujah, we got some break from the dang heat. So anyway, or perhaps you feel like that burst of main character energy during that final push at the end of your workout routine, which always feels nice because I work out every day and I'm like, "Ooh, that feels great! I'm ready to go." But just when you're about to give up, you imagine all the eyes are on you, and you're snapping your head back and throwing yourself into a high gear to cross that finish line, right? Like you're racing. But you are indeed a warrior who's strong, fierce, and after all, you never give up. You never surrender. All right. Main character there, very positive, very forceful. All right. Or maybe your main character energy feels like a growing flutter in your chest, during that first date or a big holiday party. Everything seems to slow down around you as you sweep your way through a crowded room toward your special person. Your face might be flushed, your hair's perfect, you're in the center, everyone's attention. You're the center of everyone's attention. And that's kind of another part of this main character syndrome. And when it's your channel, your show, um, and you you all eyes are on you, then you are the center of attention on your show. But what you're talking about is not you. You're talking about things that have happened out there that people are interested in. It is news. It's not about you. It's about the news. You're just a documentarian. You're just bringing it out, right? So then the next thing is these moments of main character energy can stack up in a series of forward facing behaviors that people refer to as main character syndrome. And depending on how you present yourself or impact the lives around you, or whether or not you're openly, disregard the needs of others, your time in the spotlight can either be empowering or disenfranchising. Now, because her time in the spotlight, again, it's not about her, right? Anyway, so there's a psychologist, and her name is Susan Alberts. We've all heard PhD, but this is a PSYD. She demystifies that spell of main character syndrome by explaining what makes such behavior a viral topic of discussion in today's social media, because it is a viral topic. Hey, Tucci. Yeah. Tucci's saying a lot of people like to make themselves irrelevant in the situation or whatever it is. But this person is the person who's the victim of the topic that's being talked about. In your, yes, that's right. So she talks about this, and she's explaining what makes such behavior viral topic in social media. Plus, she answers whether or not you can make main character energy work for you without making yourself a villain. Because now this is kind of what's happened. She's made herself a villain, okay? And that's really sad because she used to have really good content, right? But so this main character syndrome, what is it? Well, it's not a medical diagnosis, but it's a term that's quickly, picked curiosity online and on social media over the last few years. This main character syndrome is defined by a series of behaviors in which you see yourself as the main character in the story of your life. You are the protagonist, and everyone else is often a sidekick or a villain. You often see yourself as the most important person in the room, and you act according to the narrative of your plot, however you define it, okay? Main character energy is perhaps the more appropriate term for this state of behavior. And with this kind of energy that often presents itself to the world as if a camera is on you at all times. And this explains it perfectly because you can see no matter what's going on, they are perceiving that the camera is on them, and the camera has been on them. That's pretty much how, I mean, it's kind of how it happens here. The camera has been on them, right? So whenever um hang on a second. Whenever you talk about this, and there's that perspective that you're the center of the story, it just naturally changes the way that you present yourself to others and how you act in a public setting. Because as we've seen, when you ingratiate yourself into a victim's family and you make it all about you, it's not really about them, and then you claim them as your victims, that's exactly what you've done. All right. And it's not healthy. It's really not professional, to be honest with you. And it's just it always ends badly. That's what I'm going to say. It always ends badly. So so let's say you embrace yourself as that main character. You tend to highlight or reinforce certain aspects of your personality to benefit your story, and you place your place in other people's lives. For example, if you value being funny, you might ramp up your humor in a group setting to play that role of a class clown or to get out those extra laughs or increase your likability. You view yourself through a storytelling lens, like you're on a movie or a TV show and that the spotlight is always on you. Okay. Look at it in another context. When someone comes to you and confides to you about some problems they're facing, you might romanticize your own problems in response or disregard someone else's feelings completely by making their problems about you. All right? When you're romanticizing your problems, you often feel like you have to go through difficult problems because it gives you some sort of growth or character development. This is how this doctor explains it, and it makes sense to me, right? Sometimes with main character syndrome, you might often believe it will all magically work out in a positive way, and then everything will have a happy ending, and that's the way movies tend to wrap up things. But it's not, this is not about a movie. It's not. It's about real people and real lives. Okay. So this may not always be the case, but in most times it is the case when people suffer from main character syndrome. Okay. In essence, when it comes to main character syndrome, you run the risk of being the hero of your own story or being everyone else's villain if you're not careful. And what causes this? That's the important part. Here, hang on, hang on. We've seen this over and over and over, but did not realize that this is what caused main character syndrome, right? Narcissistic personality disorder and related traits. You heard me. Narcissistic personality disorder and related traits. Okay. Certain aspects of main character syndrome are often closely related to behaviors associated with that narcissistic personality disorder. The key difference between narcissism and the main character syndrome is the level of stability. For someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder, you would see evidence of that through their life and in different contexts in their relationships at work and at home. All right. For someone who has main character syndrome, this is something that may be the focus or mindset at certain periods of someone's life and not in others. It's kind of They suffer with anxiety, insecurity, and low self-esteem. And I'm going to tell you something. What we have seen been going on in this certain situation that's out there right now on YouTube, that's exactly what we're seeing: anxiety, insecurity, and low self-esteem. A lot of the times, the main character syndrome can stem from our insecurities if we're putting forth that false front of the most dramatic part of our lives to attract the most attention. That's often where the crossover happens with narcissism. And the true aspect of narcissism is lack of empathy for other people. We've seen that. For example, someone with main character energy may show up at a friend's birthday party, but spend an ample amount of time taking selfies, posting about their experience, and not showing up in a more genuine way of celebration. We've seen that. Main character syndrome can be very toxic to a relationship. If you're not thinking about the other person's needs, people with main character syndrome are often preoccupied with their own needs and accomplishments, right? Making it difficult to support their partner's emotional experiences. Okay. So a person with main character syndrome may alternatively rely on such behaviors as coping mechanisms during times of stress or difficult challenges when they've had a period where they've consistently they've constantly down or on them. They're constantly down on themselves. They're down on themselves constantly. They're just, woe is me, etc. For example, if being in a relationship is a priority for you, but you've had a myriad of bad experiences, you might still cast yourself as romantic in search for love and go out on Valentine's Day anyway in hopes of meeting the love of your life. Okay. The alternative of staying at home or mulling over what's not working might not be appealing to you because it means you'd have to acknowledge the fact that you are alone and not being the main character. Instead, you may hold on to that driving hope, that consistent beliefs as a means of bringing about a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you embrace that main character energy all along the way by putting yourself first. Okay. Someone may be turning to these sets of behaviors because they may derive a lot of comfort from blaming their negative experiences on being a protagonist, from believing that they're in control of their own narrative and that they are the center of the story. Right. So in social media, this is extremely dangerous. Here's the situation. And we see it. We're seeing it right now. Main character syndrome is often exacerbated or made worse by embracing a constant social media presence, okay? Doom scrolling, or comparing yourself to others online. In fact, studies show that dimensions of narcissism, such as grandiosity, entitlement, and vulnerability, are impacted in various ways, and that's how we use and interact with social media. It's making sense, isn't it? This actually, I think this describes, in my opinion, this describes this person's behavior better than I just think, in my mind, in my opinion, this is what I'm seeing. Okay. Social media is a slippery slope. It's just right down into that main character syndrome. It warns, I mean, it really primes people for developing these behaviors because we're constantly posting a highlight of reels of our lives. And this sets up the dynamic for many people to feel as if they're in that spotlight. So if you're the main character of the show and you're always coming on bringing all this information, and a lot of it's doom and gloom because it's based on crimes, okay, which that's true crime community, that's what it is. Sorry, my little dog's gonna bark a minute. But if that's what it's, you're talking about this, um, it's so easy to happen because you're constantly online, you're constantly posting, you're constantly doing something on social media because you got to stay in that spotlight, because you got to keep that channel going, and it's like on and on and on. It's just rinse repeat, rinse repeat, rinse repeat. You're doing the same thing over and over. So here are the signs that you may have main character syndrome. Think about this. Main character energy includes a host of the following behaviors that can be both good and bad, depending on the situation, the circumstances, and how you're presenting yourself. Number one, increased motivation. Number two, improved confidence. Number three, inflated sense of self or self delusions. Inflated sense of self. I'm the most important. These are my victims. I am suffering from the same thing that happened to Charles Fallow. This is what she said. Nobody's listening to me. Okay? That's what she said. Delusional, right? Having an altered perception of reality, living in a bubble, right? Ignoring and unknowingly avoiding consequences of their actions, pretending, well, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm on the top. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. These people are stalking me. I'm not stalking anybody. I'm not putting on a 9 hour live to talk about myself and all these other things and how scared I am for my life and you know just sitting there for 9 hours with all this crap for the main reason of what? It sells. Drama sells on YouTube. That is the main goal there, right? Ignoring, okay, so here we go. The other one is disassociation, all right? Attention seeking behaviors, 9 hour live, attention seeking behavior, exhibiting dramatic behavior. I'm being stalked. I'm scared for my life. Okay, these are examples of exactly what's going on in that situation. Lack of empathy. I'm more important than the victims. These are my victims. Lack of empathy. Okay. Romanticizing one's problems. Dressing or acting in ways that are not authentic. We know that that happened. We already know that happened because if you were not afraid of what was going to come out about something you may have said or done, you would not be doing what you're doing now to try to hide all of it and shut somebody up from using their First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. Okay. Um, Experiencing periods of cognitive dissonance, the dissonance, experiencing urges to reinvent yourself. Okay. When you know someone is watching you, you tend to act in a very different way than you would if you were alone. If you're being authentic, you're dressing, acting, and saying things that truly represent who you are. But with a main character syndrome, you're often putting on a wardrobe or a mask to present in a different way. Loads of Botox, never mind. And in that means many of that behaviors as main character syndrome often go unnoticed until they're called out by others around you, largely because the negative aspects are often derived from how your behaviors affect those that you interact with negatively, right? It may be easier to present this main character syndrome online than in real life. Absolutely, I believe that 100%. At home, you may drop the bouquet just, because it's really exhausting. And the people you live with know who you are. They know exactly what you like. And you don't have to put on airs. You don't have to be different. They know, all right? Is main character syndrome a bad thing? Well, let's think about it. Main character energy and its associated behaviors aren't always bad as long as you're considering the needs of others around you, even as you view yourself as the main character, right? You can use main character energy as a form of self care and preserving boundaries without stepping on the other people's boundaries. Main character energy can be